Hi there, I'm Brendan Burns, co-founder of the Kubernetes open source project and corporate vice president with Microsoft Azure, focused on DevOps and open source cloud-native technologies. I'm excited to share with you today the future direction of Kubernetes containers, open source, and DevOps on Azure. As Kubernetes has moved from early adopter to ubiquitous, we're seeing that Kubernetes is really just the beginning, the foundation for things that are built above. For most enterprises we work with, Kubernetes is a necessary but not sufficient element of building their digital transformation. It's a useful tool for improving agility and reliability, especially of their operations, but they find that it's hard to use. Knowing this, we built the Azure Kubernetes service to be more than just technology. We know that educating and helping people to maximize their usage of Kubernetes is critical to delivering success in their digital transformation of their enterprise. We've embedded best practices via Azure Advisor into the Azure portal itself so that as you use the Azure Kubernetes service, it understands what you're trying to do and gives you personalized best practice recommendations that are optimized for your deployments. As we look to the future, we're always looking to make AKS easier so that Kubernetes can be used from beginners to expert cloud natives. You can learn more about how we're doing this at aka.ms/AKSbaseline. Another thing that's clear is that Kubernetes is becoming the application vending machine. What I mean by that is it's a fabric by which other applications can be delivered anywhere from cloud to edge. But it's clear to us that as Kubernetes moves from just being in the cloud to being in ships, factories, and airports, unified management of that Kubernetes is key. There's going to be hundreds or even thousands of Kubernetes deployments for any given customer, and you need to be understanding where those Kubernetes deployments are, what applications are running them, ensure that there's a consistent set of utilities and other services running on that cluster, understand what versions are running, and make sure that every single cluster that you have is up to date with the latest security patches and the latest compliance regimes for your particular company. To meet this customer need, we've built Azure Arc for Kubernetes. Arc for Kubernetes allows you to use tools like Azure Security Center, Azure Monitor, and Azure Policy to ensure that your clusters are always healthy, secure, and compliant. And with Azure Arc, you can get a single pane of glass that gives you the status of your Kubernetes clusters at a glance. And Arc is actually even for more than just Kubernetes. You can manage Linux servers, SQL databases, and much more with a single consistent API, a single policy framework, and a single dashboard for visualizing your digital estate no matter where it's located. You can learn more at aka.ms/AzureArc. Kubernetes has emerged as a key bridge between developers and operators, truly forming the glue that enables DevOps. New approaches like GitOps that enable seamless deployment to Kubernetes from a simple Git push are taking over the market. We've looked and integrated with the Flux project, an open source implementation of GitOps, and brought it into the Azure Kubernetes service and Azure Arc. With GitOps on Azure Kubernetes and Azure Arc, you can customize all of your Kubernetes clusters, no matter where they are, in one single repo, in one single location, and ensure that there's a consistent environment everywhere. Git is also the core of the technology that can bring you from code to cloud. Most of the development that people are doing is out on GitHub these days, and with GitHub Actions, you can directly integrate with Azure Container Registry, the Azure Kubernetes service, and with these integrations and a simple YAML configuration, you can achieve rapid, reliable application rollouts to multiple regions, manage your containers deployment to container registries, and truly achieve safe, reliable deployments of applications no matter where they need to go, in the cloud, on-prem, or spanning from cloud to edge. One constant theme, even in this new cloud-native world, is the requirements for security. But even as the requirements for security get more and more intense, thankfully cloud-native and security technologies are weaving together to provide new capabilities for securing your workload. A great example of this is the integration of Azure Policy with both the Azure Kubernetes service as well as Azure Arc. When you use policy and when you use the predefined policies that Azure provides, you can ensure that the only way for developers to deploy their applications is one that conforms to your organization's security requirements, to the regulatory requirements of your industry, whether it's healthcare, financial services, or more. And if you need to customize your own policy, you have access to a rich policy language for expressing all of the different requirements necessary to deploy secure applications in your application environments. Beyond policy, pod identity in Azure Kubernetes as well as in Azure Arc allows for different identities for different roles within your microservices architectures. This separation of concern allows for the implementation of least privilege applications, which is a security best practice. Furthermore, when we look at Azure Kubernetes and Azure Arc, we've integrated them with all of the great capabilities in Azure Active Directory. That lets you use the best of breed security and identity capabilities in Active Directory, like two-factor authentication, just-in-time authorization, IP restrictions, and more to harden access to your production clusters. And the same groups that you use to manage access to Azure resources and to Word documents and PowerPoint and all of your machines can be used to manage access to your Kubernetes cluster as well. Learn how you can use built-in Azure Policy and AAD integrations to improve your security at aka.ms/aks/policy. The speed of open source adoption in the enterprise is ever increasing. Enterprises are realizing that community-driven, vendor-neutral open source is a core part of a modern technology strategy. Rather than focusing their development teams on undifferentiated heavy lifting, they're using open solutions that enable best-of-breed technologies to be adopted across the industry. And when we develop best-of-breed solutions out in the open, everybody wins. The total quality of software goes up. We all get to come together to work on the pieces that were necessary to build reliable, scalable cloud-native applications. Microsoft Azure is helping lead this revolution. With projects like Helm and Dapper and Kata, the Kubernetes event-driven autoscaler, we're not just making open source that runs great on our cloud, we're contributing our innovations back to the broader cloud-native community. But it's not just about creating new projects. It's actually about sustaining the key projects within the Kubernetes community and the cloud-native ecosystem. That's why we're doing key contributions to Kubernetes itself, to projects like Flux, the Linux kernel, and many of the core open technologies that form the basis of cloud-native computing. In addition to these contributions in the form of code, we're also involved in leadership in the special interest groups for Kubernetes. We're involved in release management, the chopping wood and carrying water that's necessary to make Kubernetes work. If you're interested in learning more about how we contribute to open source, and in particular, if you're interested in checking out some of the open source innovation like Dapper, please check out how the Dapper open source project is becoming the standard library for distributed systems.